question is, got Daryl Turner's rather incendiary response to this report. And in closing, he suggests that because you have approved all the recommendations, some of which may be subject to collective bargaining, that this represents a per se unfair labor practice under Oregon law. My understanding is when we accept a report, we're accepting a report. We're not, it doesn't constitute approval or adoption of the recommendations. So 2 parts, I guess. What is your response to that accusation? And 2, I could really use clarity on what pieces of police policy fall under collective bargaining and what we actually have the ability to change without outside of the bargaining process, because that has been a real obstacle for me and my office.
So again, I will restate that I believe it's important for all of us to work together. This is a city issue, and when I say that, that means having the union at the table when we do that, and I'll leave that at that. With that said, you know, labor rights versus management rights, obviously the city attorney can provide a little bit more on that. Anything that impacts working conditions, and changes to that, or anything that could impact pay, or again, when we talk about disciplinary matters, anything that could lead to discipline, we need to make sure that the union is involved and bring it at the table. And I'd like to also make sure that we establish lines of communication with both unions, all unions that we have, before we implement anything that's going to have a huge change in the work that's going to be done. So I think collaboration is important on the front end. Some things, you know, we need to sit down and talk about and actually agree upon, and then there are other things that don't.
Commissioner Hurst.
One more question. The police review board was discussed by the OIR group. What are you going to do with their recommendations as far as how do we make that more usable so that it's actually providing a service that the public can have some confidence in?
I have actually in the last 2 recommendations that have come to me, I've, for lack of a better term, sent back the report asking for more work or more analyses on certain areas. The police review board, I do believe, was created when it was in good faith then, and it was cutting edge at the time, but the content and what police review boards do today currently has since evolved. And given that it's an advisory board to the chief of police and the police commissioner, the outcome or anything that comes out of those boards should be helpful. And I'm finding that I'm re-investigating these cases on my own and combing through everything myself, just because of just the nature of the recommendations that come. They're pretty high level, and you know, there's ways in which it can be tweaked. I have a lot of suggestions. I've already given some direction and some guidance as to what I expect to come out of those. I also want to ensure that at least once a year that there's annual training brought in to the police review boards, and we're looking at some folks that can do that to come to us as opposed to sending them to several trainings, because we realize we have a lot of people that we need to get through. But we want to make sure that they're given the tools that they're needed in order to do the job so that the work that they're doing is actually effective. So there's a lot of that can be done in the short term, but there might be some code changes that have to be made as well to make sure that anything that's done is not only valuable but impactful. And we make sure that we have a feedback loop for what comes out of those, and we implement that moving forward.
Thank you both. Appreciate your being here.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Chief. So I don't know, do people have follow-up questions for OIR before I make them get out of their comfortable or good chairs? Very good. Carla, could you please call the roll on item number 101? I'm sorry, I'm gonna accept a motion, that is a report.
Second.
So we have a motion from Commissioner Hardesty, we have a second from Commissioner Fritz, please call the roll.
Fritz?
Thank you, OAR, for the very thorough reports that you've done over many years, and I do think that having the consistency of those reports has been very helpful to me as a council member. I do believe the recommendations can help prevent future use of deadly force if they're implemented. I do share the concerns that have been expressed by the League of Women Voters of Portland and others, including CopWatch. While this report cited a few instances where the Police Bureau made changes in training or policy that contributed to improved outcomes, OAR repeatedly restated recommendations they had made previously because of similar problems they found in their latest review. I would like to see a progress report next year on responses to recommendations made over the past 5 years. What's actually been implemented, not just accepted, and has that made any difference? As was just discussed, I share the concerns that the Police Review Board does not seem to be functioning as effectively as it could be. Glad to hear the Chief has a plan for that. I admit I was absolutely shocked and horrified hearing about the video being shown as training so quickly that it was before some of the involved officers had been investigated. Not only does that potentially interfere with the investigation, but that to have an example of something to be used as a training so quickly when people are still investigating what went wrong. I'm just horrified when we had incidents at Oregon State Hospital, Oregon Health Science University. We had it within a reasonable framework of time, that the discussion of what went wrong, what could have gone better, but not in the immediate trauma of something really awful just happened and that's all looking at it right now. So I do think that in addition to not having the officers see it, there needs to be a more thoughtful process for deciding what is used as video for training. Although I do agree with you that having actual real life instances is very helpful. This 120-page report was posted last week. It has very little time for the community to digest it, and as Mr. Handelman pointed out, it was finished a month ago. So next year I hope that there will be several weeks for the community to review it and comment, especially if community members are going to be limited to written comments. Frankly, I find written comments equally as helpful as, if not more so, to be able to read them through and ask questions and discuss things. So I hope that we'll have more time. I was very troubled by some of the investigations being ended before the witnesses were interviewed. It's certainly, the timeline is important, but accuracy and accountability are absolutely crucial. And so I hope, particularly in the instance where it was a firefighter who had not been interviewed because the person wasn't back on shift for a while, well, that's somebody that we are pretty sure is coming back and will eventually testify. So why the investigation was closed at that point is beyond troubling. So there's obviously some areas for each of us that we can work on to help reduce incidents. I do thank Donna Hayes and the Corners Hayes family for their ongoing participation in trying to fix the system, in working to fix the system. And I was very touched to hear that your report was helpful to Mrs. Hayes and her family, and I hope that you also are appreciative of that. Thank you to the Albino Ministerial Alliance, the Portland CopWatch, and the League of Women Voters for your ongoing diligence on these crucial issues. And thanks to Cynthia Castro and my staff for their staff work on that. Finally, Mayor Wheeler, thank you for your ongoing commitment to making these changes. You get blamed for everything, and so
It's my job.
Yeah, well, partly. And I would have to say that we enjoy my Commissioner Daly previously, and now Commissioner Hardesty. There's a lot of eyes on these reports now, and there's a lot of people who are willing to take on some of the tough challenges that have plagued us in the past, including what is a subject to bargaining and what could we perhaps push the envelope a little bit more, if not outright get some right sizing of what we as elected officials responsible for public safety are allowed to do in relation to the people who carry guns in our names. With that, I vote aye.
I always appreciate the thoroughness of OIR's reports, and I'm very grateful that we have built a relationship over the last 9 years that I can be brutally honest with you, and I don't have to sugarcoat what I say, and vice versa. I value the input that you've given. And what I've noticed over the years is that we make changes and then we slip back, and we make changes and then we slip back, and we make changes and then we slip back into some automatic response. I want to make sure I put on the record that legal advice is just that, it's legal advice. Just because the attorney recommends something doesn't mean that we're all obligated to do what that city attorney says. I think it is inexcusable that people lose their lives because somebody falls and they get scared when they fall, and then that appears to be within policy. And so I think that we've made some improvements over the years, but I can see areas that we've slipped back, and I'm very concerned that it just gets kind of rubber stamped. I'm happy to hear that Chief Outlaw is working on revising the Police Review Board, but I also would encourage her to look at all the advisory committees that the police has, because many of them were put in place under previous administrations that may or may not have reform in their mind. I also want to say that I'm very concerned that we have a practice that appears to emulate the 48-hour rule, even though we pretend the rule doesn't exist anymore. And so I'm hopeful to get more clarity to make sure that police have no more rights than a regular member of the public when it comes to being interviewed after an incident. And so I look forward to working with the chief and the mayor to make those changes happen. I also want to just give my heartfelt thanks to Mrs. Hayes for being here today. And it just kind of broke my heart to realize the best information she got about what happened to her grandson was because of the OIR group's report. We must do better in actually trying to assist community members in understanding what happens when their loved ones die at the hands of our police. I also want to thank my esteemed colleagues, Reverend Haynes and Reverend Dr. Bethel. And Reverend Haynes, I just want you to know I'm still an activist. I just happen to be on the city council, so I don't want that to change your mind. And thank you so much, Dan. And Mayor, I really appreciate you extending the courtesy today to others to be able to participate in this. And know that my voice is one of wanting a police department that works for everyone in the city of Portland, and not at all critical of any individuals. But if our system is broken, it is our responsibility to fix it. I vote aye. You think, oh, I was honest. You want me to go again?
Well, although she's gone and she's been thanked twice before, I have to begin by acknowledging and thanking Donna Hayes, Quantis Hayes' grandmother, for being here today and for continuing to demand that we do better. I took no comfort personally in reading about the death of Quantis Hayes. It was the most difficult part of this report for me to digest, but I take some comfort in knowing that